Beauty is common in the Star Wars galaxy. Desire is something else entirely, and the two have almost never lined up. Across thousands of worlds, a handful of species became legendary for the way other beings responded to them. Not because they were the prettiest, though some were. They became legendary because something about them worked on a level that had nothing to do with appearance at all. It ran on chemistry, on culture, on rarity, on danger, and in more than one case, on abilities the affected person never agreed to and could not even detect. That is what makes this strange rather than simple. Symmetry and skin color explain almost nothing here. A species could be wanted for what its body produced, for what its history had earned, for how completely it was hidden away, or for how badly it could hurt someone. In this galaxy, the line between attraction and self-preservation was often impossible to find. The cost fell in one direction. The species the galaxy wanted most were almost never the ones who benefited, because reputation drew attention. Attention drew buyers, and entire populations ended up treated as decoration, property, and leverage by beings who believed beauty was something a person could own. The most desired species in Star Wars are also among the most exploited, and those two facts have never been separate. So the real question is not which species is the most attractive, it is what those species carried that nothing else in the galaxy can match, why the response to them was so total, and what it took from them in return. It begins near the bottom of the list with a species that barely looks alien at all. The safest version of alien beauty in the galaxy is a woman with blue skin and golden facial markings. That is a Pantoran, and she sits at the foundation of everything the galaxy has ever found attractive in a near-human face. Take a body that looks almost entirely human, keep the proportions exactly where the eye expects them, then shift the skin tone just far enough to signal that this person comes from somewhere else. Pantorans are near-human natives of Pantora, the principal moon orbiting the ice planet Ordo Plutonia. Despite the harshness of their home system, the species reads as warm, polished, and refined. The Clone Wars brought them into view through Senator Rio Chuchi, a diplomat whose golden markings, tied to clan and status across Pantoran culture, made her impossible to miss in a room full of senators. When the Republic nearly provoked open conflict on her own moon, Chuchi walked into a room where weapons had been drawn and spoke until they were lowered, resolving it through composure alone. Nothing about her pushed the species past the comfort zone of the familiar, and that comfort zone is the entire point. The blue skin feels rare rather than strange, inviting rather than foreign. That balance runs through every near-human species the galaxy has ever desired, and a Pantoran is the purest expression of it. But one species in the galaxy earned its beauty rather than being born with it, and every mark on her face proved it. A Marialan woman's face is a living record of identity, and every mark tells a different story. The species' pattern black markings are not decoration. The Clone Wars companion material ties each one to personal achievement or spiritual identity, turning the skin into a map of what she has earned. A Marialan does not need to explain herself, because her face already carries the answer. A Twi'lek is born with her Leku, and a Pantoran is born with her blue skin. But a Marialan earns her beauty one mark at a time, accomplishment by accomplishment. That distinction makes Marialan beauty unlike anything else in the galaxy. Their skin tones run from olive to green-yellow, a shift subtle enough to read as unusual rather than alien, and the pattern tattoos give each face a sense of depth that grows with every mark she carries. Luminara Unduli set the template in Attack of the Clones and the Clone Wars, a Jedi Master who moved through the arena at Geonosis unhurried and precise while the battle raged around her, as though stillness were a weapon in itself. Her Padawan Barriss Offee inherited that presence but eventually took it somewhere far darker, and the Seventh Sister from Rebels channeled those same markings into theatrical menace. Three characters spanning discipline, tragedy, and danger, all wearing the same markings on entirely different faces. Some species carried their beauty into every corner of the galaxy, but some were vanishing before the galaxy ever had the chance to hold on. The Thelan are one of the rarest species in the galaxy, and every stage they stood on felt like it might be the last. They carry brightly colored hair, spotted skin, and a physical presence that catches the eye in any crowd. Legends material ties their decline to genetic mutations that push the species towards gradual extinction, with pure-blooded Talon presumed gone by the era of the New Republic. Canon-era characters like Latz Razzi and Gudi Terez carry the Talon name without any qualifier attached. Talon women appeared across the galaxy as performers, entertainers, and artists, roles that put their distinctiveness on literal display. The most recognizable among them is Ristal Sant, the half-human, half-Talon performer seen in Jabba's palace in the special edition of Return of the Jedi. She performed alongside the Max Rebo band, spotted skin, layered with striking hair, and a performer's confidence that made every moment feel deliberate. In Legends, her backstory runs through captivity under Black Sun and eventual rescue, tying her to the darker side of what the galaxy does with beauty it considers rare. Ristal's beauty was never entirely her own to control, and even her rescue did not undo what captivity had already taken. If Legend sources are right about pure Talon fading from the galaxy, then every half-Talon performer was proof that something irreplaceable was slipping away. A Pantoran can be admired on any number of worlds, but a Talon makes the room feel like it is witnessing something that will not come around again. Beyond rarity, though, there are species whose beauty reaches so far past the familiar that it becomes something closer to legend. Deep space pilots carried stories about the Diatham long before anyone could confirm they were real. The Angels of Iago, as they became known, are glowing, winged beings inhabiting the moons of the planet Iago. Their reputation traveled ahead of them across every hyperspace lane, passed from crew to crew, in cockpits and cantinas. Bright figures drifting between the moons, beautiful enough to make a pilot forget the controls. In The Phantom Menace, a young Anakin on Tatooine repeated those spacefarer legends with the certainty of a child who believed every word, calling them the most beautiful beings in the galaxy. The Clone Wars later confirmed their existence in Mystery of a Thousand Moons, putting the species behind the legend briefly into view. Older legend sources go further, describing natural abilities strong enough to overwhelm starship crews and cause vessels to crash on approach to Iago. If those accounts hold any truth, Diatham beauty is not observed, but experienced as a force, one that may override judgment entirely. What followed was a kind of beauty the galaxy rarely knew how to handle, because on Dathomir, power came first. The Night Sisters and their Dathomirian kin occupy a space where attractiveness is rooted in threat. Dathomirian society includes Horned Zabrak males known as Night Brothers and pale-skinned Night Sister women known for powerful witchcraft. The result is a culture where beauty and menace are the same thing entirely, and where the line between attraction and self-preservation is impossible to find. That fusion was armor built over centuries, and anyone foolish enough to test it learned the cost. Night Sisters were never a widely circulated fantasy across the galaxy. Their hold was tied to danger, magic, hierarchy, and revenge. Asajj Ventress is the sharpest proof. Everything about her was deliberate, from the bald head to the predatory way she moved, to a fighting style that felt less like combat and more like a performance of menace. The Clone Wars and Dark Disciple traced her path from Sith apprentice to bounty hunter, a woman who lost her master on Ratatak and was betrayed by Count Dooku, and returned to Dathomir only to watch her sisters burn. She never once softened herself for anyone. She proved that alien beauty can be sharp, fierce, and unapologetic without ever losing its grip, and the galaxy took notice. Mother Talzin, on the other hand, made power itself look like something a person could be drawn to. Her presence carried a weight that had nothing to do with typical attractiveness and everything to do with raw command. The kind of presence that stood taller than anyone in the room through sheer will alone. When Grievous led a full-scale droid offensive against Dathomir, not even that can make the Night Sisters submit. And then came Merrin, introduced in Jedi Fallen Order as a surviving Night Sister carrying the grief of her entire clan. Her bond with Cal Kestis in Jedi Survivor gave the Dathomirian legacy something it never had before. Conversations on rooftops, shared grief, and a closeness that made the Night Sister mystery feel personal rather than distant. For the first time, a Dathomirian woman was desired not for danger or power, but for the warmth she chose to share. Ventress is danger, Talzin is power. and Marin is tenderness, and together, they prove that Dathomirian beauty is the most versatile in the galaxy. And the next species took the opposite approach entirely, guarding its beauty behind a wall of warships so thick, the galaxy could only dream. For centuries, the most beautiful women in the galaxy lived behind a wall of warships, and no one outside could reach them. The Hapes Consortium is a coalition of 63 wealthy worlds ruled by a Queen Mother, tucked inside a cluster of space so dense with stellar hazards and navigational barriers like the transitory mists that reaching it uninvited is nearly impossible. That isolation lasted for generations, and Legends material attributes Hapan beauty to a troubling history of deliberate pairing and political control that produced a population renowned for exceptional physical beauty. Dave Wolverton's novel The Courtship of Princess Leia introduced the consortium, and the civilization it described was unlike anything else in the galaxy. Hapan beauty was not born of fortunate genetics, but cultivated deliberately, generation after generation, by ruling families that treated physical perfection as a marker of royal worth. The process spanned centuries, and the result was a civilization whose women were considered, by reputation alone, among the most stunning humanoids in the known galaxy. That reputation reached every corner of charted space, without a single Hapan woman stepping outside the consortium to prove it. What separated Hapan desirability from every other species was not appearance, but access. Every other species the galaxy desired was out in the open. A Togruta warrior could be seen on battlefields, and a Night Sister could be encountered if someone was foolish enough to land on Dathomir. Hapan women existed under entirely different terms, their beauty backed by political power, military strength, and near-total seclusion. Tanel Kajo embodied this across Legends, a Hapan Dathomiri princess who eventually became Queen Mother. Her beauty was inseparable from her royalty and her flat refusal to be treated as decoration. She decided when and how her attractiveness was acknowledged, a privilege made possible by the full political and military machinery behind her. Beyond walls and status, there were species whose beauty worked on a level no warship could block, because it changed the chemistry of desire itself. A falling woman does not need to be the prettiest in the room if attraction can be chemically reshaped. The Falleen are a reptile-like species with patterned green skin, ridged skulls, and long dark hair, a presence that sits in a colder, more unsettling space than anything the galaxy had produced before. There is an edge of threat built into the way they look, and that edge is the surface of something deeper. Falleen pheromones, natural chemicals their bodies produce, are well established in Legends through novels like Shadow of the Empire. The novel Dark Disciple and The Clone Wars both confirm the species' connection to these abilities. The word that appears most consistently across these sources is influence, not enhance, not amplify. The ability is framed as a deliberate tool, something deployed with precision and strategic intent rather than radiating passively outward. The exact scope of this ability in current canon remains unclear, but the reputation is consistent across eras. The most famous Falleen in the galaxy is a man, and that is a problem. Prince Xizor, the Black Sun crime lord from Shadows of the Empire, used Falleen pheromone influence like a weapon, deploying it with the same cold calculation he brought to criminal strategy. His portrayal made the species' abilities unforgettable, turning the Falleen from a background species into one of the most compelling entries in the Legends canon. But Falleen women remain almost invisible in the storytelling. They stand in the background of power, green-skinned, and perfectly still, while the story moves past them. Far from weakening what the Falleen represent, that gap sharpens everything about them. Even in the margins of a scene, a Falleen woman commands attention the way a locked door commands curiosity. The galaxy has only glimpsed what this species can do, and the biology speaks for itself in a language that does not ask for permission. The Falleen proved that desire could be manufactured, but the next species proves something worse, that beauty could turn a civilization into a target. Togruta beauty shone through Jedi heroes and bled through the horrors of the Kyros arc in the Clone Wars. Their head tails, upward growing horns known as montrals, bold facial markings, and brightly colored skin give the species a regal shape unlike anything else in the galaxy. The montrals add height and grandeur that pushed the species away from softness and towards something closer to warrior royalty. The draw is rooted in the portrayal of grown Togruta women, in Shakti, in the adult Ahsoka of Rebels and the live-action series, and in the unmistakable species presence itself. Shakti embodied that quality completely. A Jedi General throughout the prequel era, she carried herself with a serene presence that made stillness look powerful and combat look effortless. Where other Jedi drew attention through action, Shakti drew it through restraint, and that restraint carried a weight that was impossible to ignore. Ahsoka Tano carried that same appeal in a completely different direction. Her acrobatic lightsaber work, her fierceness, her growth from Padawan into the lead of her own series gave the Togruta species a depth of representation that few other species ever received. Ahsoka is one of the few alien women in the galaxy whose appeal had nothing to do with vulnerability and everything to do with competence, loyalty, and a restlessness that made her impossible to look away from. The adult Ahsoka, the one who walked away from the Jedi Order and came back on her own terms, carried the Togruta legacy further than anyone before her. Between Shakti's quiet gravity and Ahsoka's relentless energy, the species covers an enormous range of what attractiveness can look like. The Togruta shape, those montrals and headtails moving in sync with a body trained for either meditation or combat, creates an impression of physical grace that few other species can match. That grace is what made the Togruta famous across the galaxy. Then the Zygeria arc changed everything the galaxy believed about Togruta beauty. The colony world of Kiros was home to 50,000 Togruta civilians living in peace, and the Zygerian slavers targeted every single one of them. Across the episodes Kidnapped, Slaves of the Republic, and Escape from Kadavo, the series did not soften what the trade in captive people looked like up close. The Togruta faced auction blocks where families were separated, collars locked around warriors and elders alike, forced labor in the processing facilities of Kadavo, and the crushing loss of dignity across an entire population. The Zygerians built their civilization around forced servitude as a cultural tradition, and the episodes never needed to say the Togruta were taken because they were beautiful. The truth ran deeper than appearance alone. A peaceful, visually distinctive colony reduced to product, labor, and leverage by an empire built on captivity. Ahsoka's fury during the Zygeria arc, watching her own people collared and paraded before crowds on auction blocks, is among the most emotionally raw stretches in the entire series. But no species in the galaxy was more consumed for its beauty than the one whose image the galaxy could never stop circulating. No species in the galaxy has been more desired, more put on show, and more thoroughly used for that desirability than the Twi'leks. They are the most iconic answer to the question of which species the galaxy wanted most. Their twin Leku extend from the base of the skull. Their skin tones span every color the galaxy can produce, and their physical grace makes every movement feel deliberate and fluid. Twi'leks sit at the center of everything the galaxy has ever done with alien femininity, a humanoid body carrying one dramatic alien feature that lifts the entire presence into something that feels more than human. The Leku carry far more than visual weight. They are highly sensitive, central to the Twi'lek language, Twi'leki, which blends spoken words with subtle Leku movements to express complete thoughts. Legends material describes them as containing part of the brain itself, which is why they carry the alternate name Braintails. They frame the face, move with the body, and create a sharp, recognizable form across any room. And that instant recognition made the species dangerously easy for the galaxy to buy and sell. Aayla Secura proved that Twi'lek beauty could be a warrior's quality rather than a performer's. Her fluid combat style across Attack of the Clones and the Clone Wars made her one of the most visually striking Jedi in the prequel era, showing that the grace so often associated with Twi'lek women belonged just as naturally on a battlefield as it ever did on a stage. But Twi'lek fame was never built on beauty alone. The image of the beautiful Twi'lek woman became the galaxy's most recognized fantasy, not because of any single quality the species possessed, but because the galaxy's criminal economy, its auction houses, its entertainment districts, and its wealthy elites all worked together to make sure that image was everywhere. The original species lore puts it plainly. That beautiful image doomed generations of young Twi'lek women into servitude, with the wealthy and corrupt using them as badges of prestige. That image filled Hutt palaces, cantinas, wealthy courts, and performance halls across thousands of worlds. Ryloth's harsh conditions fed directly into the system. The Twi'lek homeworld faced separatist invasion and later imperial occupation, and the vulnerability of its communities gave criminal networks easy access to a population the galaxy already considered desirable. The trade in captive people became one of the darkest recurring threads in Twi'lek history. The galaxy did not just profit from Twi'lek beauty, but took something that belonged to them and hollowed it out. Ula is the clearest image in that system, a young Twi'lek woman taken from the clan lands of Ryloth and held captive in Jabba's palace. She was forced to perform for the Hutt's pleasure. She resisted and was struck down for it, dropped into the Rancor pit beneath the palace floor. Her beauty was literally caged for someone else's enjoyment, and her end proved what refusal cost inside that world. Ula is not an exception. She is the visible surface of a system that the original species lore describes as dooming entire generations. Yet the galaxy also produced the complete opposite of that image. Hera Syndulla is the most fully realized Twi'lek protagonist across Rebels and Ahsoka, a general, a pilot, and a leader who exists in direct opposition to the Ula image. She led a rebel cell, commanded a warship, and raised a family while the galaxy burned around her, earning every bit of respect she carried without ever trading on her species' reputation. She proves that Twi'lek beauty does not have to come at the species' own expense. Her presence does not erase that history, but it insists loudly that the history is not the whole story. The species above them did not just project desire, she absorbed it, and that is a power no beauty alone could ever match. A Zeltron woman does not make a person find her attractive. She makes the entire room feel like attraction is the only reasonable response. On the surface, Zeltrons look just like another attractive near-human species. They carry pink to red skin, a near-human body, and features that read as warm and inviting. If the surface were the full story, Zeltrons would sit somewhere in the middle alongside Pantorans and Mirialans. The surface, however, is the least interesting thing about them. Canon keeps the species alive through characters like Lorica Damaris from the Join the Resistance series, where a Zeltron character describes the effect plainly. They radiate something, a scent or a feeling, that makes people warm to them almost immediately. The deeper Zeltron reputation was built in Legends. Classic Marvel Star Wars comics and later expanded universe stories painted the Zeltron home world of Zeltros as a planet where enjoyment is not a private indulgence but a public value, a civilization oriented entirely around celebration, connection, and emotional openness. On Zeltros, pleasure is not a vice, it is closer to a civic duty, a way of life built on the belief that joy shared is joy multiplied. In practice, a Zeltron's appeal is not one quality, but a layered effect. She looks striking while projecting emotional warmth and genuine intensity, and the people near her feel more relaxed, more open, more inclined to enjoy the moment. Legends sourcebook material like the Essential Guide to Alien Species establishes that Zeltrons produce pheromones and project emotional states outward. On their own, those abilities would place them alongside the Fallen as a species that can influence desire. What separates them is what flows in the other direction. Zeltrons do not just project emotions, they absorb them. They are empathic, meaning they constantly read and feel the emotions of every person around them. She feels your attraction, her warmth responds to it. You feel her warmth and lean in closer, and she feels that too. The cycle tightens with every passing moment, and by the time anyone notices, the entire room is shifted. A Zeltron is not choosing to be charming, she's responding to what she feels in the room, and every smile, every warm glance, every moment of closeness is shaped not by a strategy, but by genuine emotional response to the people around her. The Legends-era Zeltron Dani, who appeared in Marvel's classic Star Wars comics, including the Stenax Shuffle, showed this in action. She was warm, emotionally transparent, physically affectionate, and openly direct. and every character near her responded with a comfort and closeness that beauty alone could never explain. Being near Dani did not just make people attracted, it made them feel known. The empathic connection comes at a cost. A Zeltron in a crowd does not just feel warmth, she feels everything. The jealousy, the grief, the loneliness, the desire that nobody in the room would ever admit to. Still, Zeltron pheromones carry a weight the galaxy itself has recognized. The people who feel drawn in may not be responding to what they see at all, but to a chemical influence they cannot detect and an empathic connection they never agreed to. The galaxy knows what a Zeltron can do. It warns people away, and almost nobody listens, because listening would mean giving up the best feeling they've ever had. The feeling is real, and so is the influence, and no one who has experienced both has ever been able to tell them apart. She sits above every species because she does not just outshine them, she makes everyone around her forget there was ever a comparison. The galaxy's most desired women were never just beautiful. They were shaped, exploited, weaponized, and biologically armed. And the species that rose to the top did so not by being prettier than the rest, but by changing what attraction itself means in a galaxy that was never kind to the women it wanted most. One species finished above the rest, and yet no species was ever wanted more widely than the one sitting just below it. Twi'leks are the face the galaxy attached to alien beauty, copied across cantinas, palaces, and auction houses on thousands of worlds. What made them that recognizable was never a single feature, and it comes down to 5 things.
First, their exotic beauty creates an irresistible visual impact. Twi'leks have something rare in the galaxy, the perfect mix of what feels familiar and what feels new. Their humanoid shapes make them approachable and easy for humans and near-human species to relate to. At the same time, their unique features set them apart from every other species in ways that always draws attention. The most striking part of their appearance is their wide range of skin colors, which often look so bright and vivid that they seem almost unreal. Blue-skinned Twi'leks, like Jedi Master Aayla Secura, became famous for their glowing presence. During the Clone Wars, her appearance on battlefields left deep impressions that went beyond her strong skills as a commander. Green Twi'leks give off a completely different feeling. Their shades of emerald can shift from dark forest green to shining jade, creating a natural vibrancy that suggests life and growth. The dancer Ula showed this perfectly. Her skin glowed with a beauty that seemed not of this world, enchanting not just Jabba's court, but also every being who ever watched her perform. But perhaps the most legendary of all are the red Twi'leks, called Lathans. These crimson-skinned Twi'leks are extremely rare, with fewer than 1% of the population showing this color. Meeting a Lathan like Darth Talon is an unforgettable experience. Their rarity only increases the sense of mystery and wonder they inspire across galactic cultures. These different skin colors developed as natural adaptations to Ryloth's tough environment, where each region required its people to survive in different ways. Yet this remarkable beauty often came with painful consequences. Throughout history, Twi'leks were treated as objects of desire and even as prizes to be owned. Crime lords like Jabba the Hutt kept them as living trophies, while wealthy families in the core worlds bought them as ornamental servants. This widespread mistreatment created stereotypes that unfairly reduced an entire species to decorations. At the same time, this very exploitation shows how strongly their beauty influenced others. From Hutts to humans, from Sith to Jedi, every culture noticed and reacted to Twi'lek charm. This cross-species attraction points to something deeper than surface-level taste. It reveals fundamental truths about how beauty shapes the way beings across the galaxy think and feel. But appearance represents only the beginning of Twi'lek allure. Second, their Leku embody thousands of years of cultural sophistication. These twin head tails are much more than a unique physical feature. They act as living records of heritage, markers of social rank, and symbols that connect every Twi'lek to traditions passed down over thousands of years. In Twi'lek society, the length and shape of the Leku carry important meaning. Long, well-shaped head tails often show refinement, strong genetics, and family pride. Twi'leks spend great effort caring for them, decorating them with jewelry or ceremonial ornaments that turn biology into art. This cultural depth can be seen in the Kalikori, known as the sacred family totems that record ancestry. Every generation adds to them, making the kalikori both a treasured heirloom and a symbol of status. Regional differences add even more variety. Mountain clans use metals in their ornaments to reflect mining traditions. Coastal groups prefer natural materials like carved coral. Desert communities decorate with precious stones and crystals. These styles create a visual language that instantly shows where a twi'lek comes from and what community they belong to. But leku are more than decoration. They also serve as tools for social communication. Observant twi'leks can read someone's background, education, and family connections just by looking at how their leku are styled. This makes them attractive not only for their appearance, but also for the culture and history they represent. Even more striking is how leku preserve history. Some decorative patterns have remained unchanged for centuries, linking modern twi'leks directly to their ancestors. This sense of continuity creates an image of timeless elegance that many other species find deeply appealing. Yet culture manifests most powerfully through movement itself. Third, twi'leks are known for graceful movements that rise above ordinary skill and coordination. Their movements create a kind of visual poetry that captures the attention of people from every species. The leku adds flowing rhythm to every gesture, reacting naturally to emotions and intentions in ways that make even motion feel real and full of meaning. This natural elegance is not something they have to practice. It is built into their very biology. The head tails are connected to large nerve networks that react automatically to feelings, causing small involuntary motions that reveal what the twi'lek is feeling inside. This honesty in their body language cannot be faked, which builds both trust and emotional connection with anyone watching. The result is that even simple actions turn into something mesmerizing. Walking becomes a smooth, almost dance-like display. Reaching for an object forms an arc of graceful movement. Even small, unconscious gestures made during conversation hold the viewer's attention longer than those of most humanoid beings. Twi'lek dance raises this natural beauty to the level of art. Different regions developed their own styles. Coastal communities created flowing dances inspired by water, while mountain clans used sharp and precise movements in ceremonial performances. These dances carried many meanings at once. They told stories from history, taught lessons about morality, and celebrated the cycles of nature. Even during the Clone Wars, wary soldiers asked to see twi'lek dances during rare moments of rest. For them, these performances offered hope and beauty in the middle of conflict. But this same gift also led to suffering. Ula's story shows how something sacred could be twisted into cruelty. She was trained in harvest dances meant to honor life and fertility, but as Jabba's slave, she was forced to perform for his court. When she resisted his advances, he threw her to the Rancor, destroying her beauty rather than respecting it. Her death shows the very qualities that make twi'leks admired can also be used against them by those who see beauty as a possession instead of a gift. Movement, however, represents only one dimension of twi'lek communication. Fourth, their mysterious nonverbal language creates irresistible intrigue. The secret to the twi'lek mystery comes from their ability to communicate in ways other species can sense but never fully understand. This creates a natural fascination that draws people in while keeping a sense of the unknown. The leku contains sensitive nerve tissue that extends brain function beyond the skull, turning them into organs capable of sending complex signals through small movements. A slight tilt can show emotion. A deliberate crossing can mean worry or disagreement. A quick twitch might signal excitement or fear. These cues often happen without conscious thought, creating a layer of communication that others find both strange and captivating. Skilled twi'leks can turn this into an advanced silent language. Masters can hold entire conversations just through the position of their head tails, all while looking as though they are only shifting casually in place. This skill proves especially useful in trade and politics. Twi'lek negotiators often use hidden signals to coordinate with allies, leaving rivals confused about how they lost ground in a discussion. The mystery itself becomes part of the attraction. Many beings across the galaxy feel drawn to communication they cannot fully unlock. When they interact with twi'leks, they sense extra layers of meaning just beyond their reach. Instead of being frustrated, most grow even more curious and engaged. Even Jedi noticed this complexity. Ayla Secura, for example, showed how the Force could enhance rather than replace Leku language, adding more depth to her interactions. This ability impressed other Jedi and gave Twi'leks a reputation for insight and wisdom. This unique form of expression highlights the cultural richness that makes Twi'leks so appealing across the galaxy. Fifth, their culture was shaped by the harsh survival challenges of Ryloth. Twi'lek appeal goes beyond physical traits. It also comes from personality and values shaped over thousands of years of surviving one of the toughest planets in the galaxy. These survival-based qualities make them attractive for their strength of character, not just their looks. Ryloth, their homeworld, is full of extreme conditions. The planet is tidally locked, which means one side is always in burning sunlight while the other is trapped in freezing night. Only a thin strip between these zones, known as the Twilight Band, is livable. This narrow stretch is where Twi'lek cities and culture grew. Living in such a fragile space forced Twi'leks to depend on each other. No one could survive alone. Whole communities had to work together to build systems that could handle the harsh environment. Over time, this pressure shaped a culture built on teamwork, loyalty, empathy, and long-term thinking instead of selfishness or quick gain. These values became part of their natural appeal to other species. Twi'leks are known for their strong devotion to partners and causes they believe in. They show deep compassion, forged through shared struggle, and they place great importance on family bonds and passing traditions from one generation to the next. The Syndulla family shows this heritage clearly. Cham Syndulla used these values to lead his people during the dark days of imperial rule. He brought divided groups together and won allies across species by relying on trust and loyalty that Twi'lek culture had shaped for centuries. His daughter Hera carried those same values into the rebellion. Her bond with the Jedi Kanan Jarrus proved how Twi'lek strengths could cross species lines. Together, they blended her planning and compassion with his combat skills, becoming stronger as a team than they ever could alone. Their son then became living proof that Twi'leks could form families across species. This showed that their appeal is not only about beauty, but also about true connection and resilience. However, these same attractive qualities can become dangerous when weaponized by those who understand their power. The dark side of Twi'lek appeal shows when their natural gifts are used for harmful purposes. Every quality that makes them admired, such as beauty, culture, graceful movement, unique communication, and emotional depth, can be twisted into tools of control and manipulation. The difference between male and female Twi'lek appeal helps explain this. Female Twi'leks are often exploited for their looks, while males usually gain respect through skill and leadership. Cham Syndulla, for example, inspired loyalty not by charm, but through his sharp tactics and ability to bring different groups together. His appeal came from trust and respect, not from being seen as a prize. But even positive traits can be turned to darker ends in the wrong hands. The clearest example of this is Darth Talon, a Sith who used her Twi'lek gifts to become one of the most dangerous figures in galactic history. Talon showed the full corruption of everything that makes Twi'leks appealing. Her rare red skin made her stand out even more, while her Sith tattoos displayed her rank and power. Her natural grace became a tool for seduction, used to break defenses and create weaknesses in her enemies. Her deep cultural knowledge became a way to manipulate the emotions and desires of those around her. The most dangerous part of her skill was how well she understood stereotypes about her species. Many people thought Twi'leks were either helpless victims or simple entertainers. Few imagined one could be a master planner who used psychological warfare. Talon took advantage of this blindness, dismantling her opponents from within before they even realized what was happening. She did more than trick individuals. She weaponized the very prejudices that had oppressed her people for centuries. By acting in ways others expected while secretly turning those expectations against them, she created deception so complete that many victims never understood how they had been defeated. This shows the darkest side of Twi'lek appeal, where every good trait is turned into its harmful opposite while still keeping the appearance of beauty. Looking at these 5 traits together, it's clear that Twi'leks are more than just beautiful. They are some of the most visually striking humanoids in the galaxy, alongside species like the Togruta. Their appeal goes beyond looks, combining culture, movement, and personality in ways that even fans think the creators designed to be captivating. Twi'leks show both the promise of real connections across differences and the danger of being treated as objects instead of respected individuals.
Those same gifts could be turned outward, and in Legends, the older continuity now treated as unofficial, one Twi'lek did exactly that. She was brought to a dead Sith world as a child and earned her tattoos one ritual at a time, under a master she would later be ordered to kill. By the time the galaxy learned her name, Darth Talon served as the personal enforcer of a Sith empire that had already wiped out the Jedi.
The young Twi'lek girl who would become Darth Talon was raised from childhood in the One Sith Order on Korriban. As a Lathan, the rarest type of red-skinned Twi'lek, she stood out among the thousands of acolytes training in the Valley of the Dark Lords. Little is known about her life before the Sith, only that she was identified as Force-sensitive at a young age and brought to Korriban to serve Darth Krayt's vision. This wasn't the old Sith Empire, and it didn't follow Darth Bane's rule of two that had limited the Sith to just one master and one apprentice. Instead, this was the One Sith, created by Darth Krayt, who believed thousands of Sith should serve under a single Dark Lord. Krayt himself was ancient, having survived since the Clone Wars when he was a Jedi Knight named Ashard Het, who had fought alongside Anakin Skywalker. However, after Order 66, he wandered the galaxy until the Yuuzhan Vong captured him and implanted coral seeds that caused constant pain while making him live far longer than normal. This endless agony taught him that strength came through suffering, so he rejected both Jedi weakness and Bane's limitations. While the galaxy thought the Sith were extinct, Krayt spent over a century building his forces on Korriban in the Valley of the Dark Lords. By the time the girl began her training, thousands of students were learning there, and all of them served Krayt's vision, where Sith worked together instead of fighting each other for power. The girl's training fell under Darth Ruin, a Twi'lek Sith Lord whose methods were brutal even by Sith standards. Under his harsh guidance, she survived trials that killed most other apprentices. The specifics of her training remain undocumented, but it forged her into a weapon of terrible efficiency. Under Ruin's teaching, she mastered advanced lightsaber combat through relentless practice. She specialized in the acrobatic Ataru form and the precise Makashi style, developing a unique one-handed fighting technique that would become her signature. Her combat training went beyond mere swordplay. She learned to channel the dark side through every movement, making each strike potentially lethal. Beyond fighting, the Academy taught her the skills of an assassin. She mastered force lightning and stealth techniques, learned to read her enemy's weaknesses, and developed the cold ruthlessness that would define her career. Most importantly, she learned absolute loyalty to the One Sith cause, subordinating all personal desires to serve Krayt's vision. Her real transformation began when she started earning her Sith tattoos, which weren't just decorations, but were carved into her flesh by Darth Krayt himself. Each tattoo was earned in ritual combat, marking her achievements and devotion to the Sith. The process was agonizing, but she endured it again and again until her body became covered in black markings that told the story of her trials. Meanwhile, the galaxy outside Korriban had no idea about the growing threat because everything looked peaceful on the surface. 130 years after the Battle of Yavin, Luke Skywalker's New Republic had fallen long ago and was replaced by the Galactic Alliance, which struggled with internal problems. The Jedi Order had hundreds of members who served as peacekeepers, while Emperor Roan Fel commanded his own Force users called Imperial Knights, who served the light side but were loyal to the Empire first. Talon's Rise. The girl's final test came after years of training when Krayt commanded her to kill Darth Ruin. This was her ultimate test of loyalty. She had to prove that her devotion to the Order was stronger than any personal attachment. Therefore, she had to execute her own master on Krayt's demand to show she could sacrifice anything for the Sith cause. She found Ruin meditating in his chambers, and the old Twi'lek smiled when he sensed her approach, because he knew this moment would come. He didn't resist as she ignited her lightsaber and removed his head with one clean strike, and she felt no sadness or guilt because Ruin had trained those emotions out of her long ago. When she presented Ruin's head to Krayt, The Dark Lord was impressed by her cold efficiency, which was better than warriors who killed in anger. As a reward, he gave her a Sith name that matched her deadly nature by calling her Darth Talon, after the curved claws of predators that strike without warning. The name perfectly captured what she had become, since she was beautiful and deadly with no mercy in her heart. But Krayt had even bigger plans for his new weapon, because he elevated her to become one of his hands who were his personal enforcers. Her partner would be Darth Nihil, a pale Nagai warrior whose species was naturally good at fighting, and while Talon preferred stealth and precision, Nihil favored overwhelming force. Together, they would spread fear across the galaxy as Krayt's instruments of destruction. As Talon adjusted to her new power, Krayt revealed the plan he had been making for decades, which would bring the Sith back to rule. The One Sith would manipulate the galaxy into war by sabotaging the Ossus Project, where Jedi and reformed Yuuzhan Vong worked together to heal worlds damaged by the Vong War. Sith agent Darth Maladai would corrupt the project's biotechnology so that instead of healing planets, it would create disasters, and this would give Emperor Fel an excuse to declare war on the Alliance. Then, in all the chaos, the Sith would emerge from hiding to conquer both empires at once. Standing in Krayt's throne room, with Nihil beside her, Darth Talon finally understood why she had been trained so hard. She had been shaped from a slave into the perfect weapon for this exact moment. And soon the galaxy would learn to fear the Crimson Assassin whose beauty hid a killer's heart. The War of Sith Design. The galaxy's descent into chaos began with an act of deliberate sabotage that would spark the Sith Imperial War. For decades, the One Sith had infiltrated both the Galactic Alliance and Fel Empire, positioning agents to manipulate events at the perfect moment. That moment came with the Ossus Project, a joint venture between the Jedi Order and the reformed Yuuzhan Vong to heal worlds devastated by the Vong War using bioengineering. Under Krayt's orders, Sith agent Darth Maladai corrupted the project's biotechnology. However, instead of healing barren worlds, the sabotaged organisms created ecological disasters wherever they were deployed. On Wayland, forests mutated into carnivorous jungles that devoured entire settlements. Meanwhile, on other worlds, plagues spread that killed millions while leaving survivors grotesquely transformed. Thus, the galaxy watched in horror as the Jedi's humanitarian effort became a catastrophe. Public opinion turned violently against both the Jedi and their Yuuzhan Vong allies. Many believed the Vong had deliberately corrupted the project as revenge for their defeat decades earlier. Still, others blamed Jedi incompetence or even deliberate malfeasance. Therefore, the Galactic Alliance, already struggling with internal divisions, found itself politically paralyzed as member worlds demanded action against those responsible. Emperor Roan Fel seized this opportunity, though he didn't realize he was playing into Sith hands. Invoking ancient treaties and claiming the Alliance had lost the moral authority to govern, he declared war in 127 ABY. The Fel Empire's propaganda portrayed the conflict as a righteous crusade against a corrupt government that harbored war criminals. Yet Fel himself was reluctant to start the war and initially forbade his Imperial Knights from participating, but mounting pressure from advisors secretly loyal to Krayt forced his hand. For 3 years, the galaxy tore itself apart. The Sith Imperial War saw massive fleet battles that turned entire systems into graveyards. The Jedi, bound by oath to defend the Alliance despite public hatred, found themselves fighting a two-front war against Imperial forces and their own people's mistrust. Meanwhile, Krayt's hidden Sith fed intelligence to both sides, ensuring maximum casualties and preventing any decisive victory that might end the conflict too soon. By 130 ABY, the Galactic Alliance could no longer sustain the war effort. Their fleet was decimated, their economy in ruins, and their member worlds defecting en masse. Thus, the Alliance formally surrendered to the Fel Empire, seemingly ending the bloodshed. Emperor Fel prepared to rebuild the galaxy under Imperial rule, unaware that his victory was precisely what Krayt had orchestrated. The betrayal came 3 days after the Alliance's surrender. Thousands of hidden Sith warriors emerged simultaneously throughout the Empire. They had been posing as Imperial officers, bureaucrats, even members of Fel's own guard. Therefore, the coordinated strikes paralyzed Imperial command structure within hours. Emperor Fel barely escaped Coruscant with a handful of loyal Imperial Knights, forced to abandon the throne world to Sith control. But the true massacre occurred on Ossus, where the Jedi Order maintained their primary academy. Krayt had identified the Jedi as the only force capable of rallying resistance against Sith rule. Therefore, they had to be eliminated completely and publicly to break the galaxy's spirit. The attack began at dawn, with orbital bombardment that shattered the Academy's defenses. Then came the ground assault, with hundreds of Sith lords and warriors storming the temple grounds. The slaughter was methodical and merciless. Jedi Masters who had survived the war found themselves overwhelmed by sheer numbers. Meanwhile, Padawans barely old enough to hold lightsabers were cut down in training halls. Furthermore, the temple's ancient archives burned as Sith destroyed millennia of accumulated knowledge. By the time the sun was set, the Jedi Order that had protected the galaxy for over 1,000 generations was effectively extinct. Among the handful who escaped was Cade Skywalker, son of Jedi Master Cole Skywalker. The boy watched his father die holding off multiple Sith to buy time for others to flee. Something broke in young Cade that day, a fracture in his connection to the Force that would define his future. Thus, he disappeared into the Outer Rim, abandoning his heritage and drowning his abilities in death sticks and denial. 3 days after Ossus, Darth Krayt revealed himself to the galaxy. Broadcasting from the Imperial Palace on Coruscant, he declared the formation of a new Sith Empire that would bring order through strength. The one Sith emerged from the shadows to claim their rule openly, with thousands of Sith taking positions of authority across former Alliance and Imperial territories, and horrified by the Jedi massacre, accepted Sith rule in exchange for stability. As one of Krayt's hands, Darth Talon now wielded authority second only to the Dark Lord himself. Military commanders who might have dismissed Sith cultists now bowed to her commands or faced immediate execution. Meanwhile, planetary governors competed for her favor, knowing that disappointing the Emperor's hand meant death or worse. Her reputation spread across the Empire like a plague. The Crimson Assassin, whose black tattoos marked her achievements, who appeared from nowhere to eliminate the Empire's enemies with surgical precision. For the next 7 years, Talon hunted the scattered remnants of opposition. Surviving Jedi who had escaped Ossus were tracked to their hiding places and eliminated. Furthermore, Imperial officers whose loyalty to Roan Fel ran too deep disappeared in the night. Additionally, resistance cells that formed along former Alliance military units found their leaders assassinated and their bases exposed. Through it all, Talon served as Krayt's perfect weapon, never questioning orders or showing mercy to enemies of the Sith Empire. Mission to Socorro. In 137 ABY, 7 years after the Sith Empire's rise, Darth Talon received her most significant assignment since becoming Krayt's hand. Intelligence networks had finally located Princess Marasiah Fel, daughter of the deposed emperor, hiding on the desert world of Socorro. Krayt wanted her captured alive to serve as leverage against her father's government in exile, and to demoralize Imperial knights who still resisted Sith rule. Socorro was a smuggler's haven where questions weren't asked and credits spoke louder than ideology. The princess had taken refuge in an Imperial mission, a diplomatic compound that served as a safe house for Fel loyalists. However, she was protected by Imperial Knight Elka Vetter, a skilled warrior trained specifically to combat Force users. Vetter had kept the princess hidden for months, but Sith spies had finally penetrated their security. Talon approached the mission as night fell, using Force concealment to mask her presence from the compound's sensors. Yet rather than attempt stealth, she chose psychological warfare. Setting fire to the mission's outer buildings with Force lightning, she created chaos that drew defenders out of fortified positions. Meanwhile, smoke and flames provided cover while panicked civilians fled in all directions, making organized resistance impossible. Elka Vetter emerged from the main building with her silver lightsaber ignited, immediately recognizing the Sith threat. The Imperial Knight was skilled, having trained since childhood to serve the Fel dynasty. Moreover, her armor could resist some lightsaber strikes, and her Force abilities, while focused on defense and enhancement rather than raw power, made her a formidable opponent. Their duel took place in the mission's burning courtyard, surrounded by flames that cast dancing shadows across ancient stone. Vetter fought with defensive precision, attempting to deflect Talon's aggressive attacks. For several minutes, she managed to hold her ground, even forcing Talon back with a series of counterstrikes. but Talon had the advantage of dark side power and ruthless training. Using her mastery of Ataru's acrobatic strikes, combined with Makashi's precision, she created an opening in Vetter's defense. Her lightsaber severed the knight's sword hand at the wrist, sending both hand and weapon tumbling into the flames. Before Vetter could retreat, Talon's blade pierced her leg, dropping her to her knees. With her opponent crippled but alive, Talon demonstrated why Sith were feared more for their cruelty than their combat skills. She used Force lightning not to kill, but to torture, sending controlled bursts of energy through Vetter's nervous system while extracting information from her mind. The Imperial Knight tried to resist, using mental techniques to shield the princess's escape route, but pain eventually broke through her defenses. When Talon had extracted all useful intelligence, she ended Vetter's suffering with a final burst of lightning that killed the knight. There was no mercy or respect, only cold efficiency in eliminating an enemy of the Sith Empire. The princess had indeed escaped, aided by unexpected allies. A smuggling crew operating a modified freighter called the Minok had been hired to extract her. However, what Talon didn't realize at the time was that this crew included Cade Skywalker, the missing heir to the Jedi legacy. He had spent years hiding his Force abilities behind death sticks and false identity, but fate kept drawing him back into the conflict between light and dark. Rather than return to Coruscant, Talon pursued the princess directly. Her investigation quickly revealed that the damaged ship had fled toward Vendaxa, and she would not allow her prey to escape twice. Assembling a strike force with Darth Nihil and Sith warriors, she set course for the jungle world, determined to complete her mission. The Hunt on Vendaxa. The trail led directly to Vendaxa, a jungle world where Princess Fel's damaged ship had crash-landed after fleeing Socorro. The princess survived, but suffered severe injuries, forcing her protectors to seek shelter while attempting repairs. Meanwhile, Cade's crew had stayed to help, unaware that Sith forces were already closing in. Talon coordinated the pursuit carefully, bringing Darth Nihil and a contingent of Sith warriors to ensure no escape this time. Vendaxa's surface was a nightmare of carnivorous plants and hostile fauna, yet Talon used this to her advantage, using beast control techniques to drive native predators toward the crash site to flush out her prey. The creatures created chaos as they attacked everything in their path. Therefore, while her targets fought for survival against the beasts, Talon positioned her forces for the real assault. The ambush began when two Jedi revealed themselves among the princess's protectors. Wolf Zazen, a Zabrak Jedi Master who had survived Ossus despite losing his arm to Darth Nihil, emerged with his green lightsaber ignited. Beside him stood Shadow Vao, a blue-skinned Twi'lek who had been Zazen's Padawan before the massacre. Both had spent 7 years hiding from the Sith, but they couldn't abandon the princess in her time of need. Talon engaged both Jedi simultaneously, demonstrating her mastery of combat. She flowed between defensive sequences to block their coordinated attacks and aggressive strikes aimed at creating openings. Zazen's experience made him dangerous despite his prosthetic arm, while Vao's youth gave him speed and unpredictability. The duel with Shadow Vao took an unexpected turn when he seemed cornered. Just as Talon moved in for what appeared to be a finishing strike, Vao revealed his lightsaber had a second blade. The surprise activation forced Talon to rapidly adjust her attack, and in that moment of recalibration, Vao managed to escape her reach. This tactical revelation would stay with her, a reminder that even seemingly defeated opponents could harbor surprises. Using Ataru's acrobatic techniques, Talon leaped over Vao's low sweep and landed a devastating kick that sent him flying into the jungle undergrowth. With the Padawan temporarily removed, she focused on Zazen. The Jedi Master had adopted a defensive stance, trying to buy time for the others to escape, but Talon had trained specifically to overwhelm Jedi defenses. Combining her aggressive assault with precision strikes, she created a pattern of attacks that slowly forced Zazen to give ground. When he stepped back to avoid a particularly vicious combination, she seized the opening. Force lightning erupted from her free hand, catching Zazen before he could raise his blade to block. The electricity coursed through the Jedi Master's body, overloading his nervous system and dropping him to his knees. Before she could secure Zazen, Princess Fel herself entered the battle. Despite her injuries, the princess attacked with the fury of someone who had lost everything to the Sith. She wielded a stolen lightsaber with more passion than skill, driven by thoughts of Elka Vetter's death. Talon easily deflected the wild strikes, but the distraction allowed Shadow Vao to return to the fight. Then, everything changed in an instant. Cade Skywalker, who had been fighting Sith warriors near the crashed ship, witnessed Talon torturing Wolf Sazan with Force lightning. Something primal awakened in him at the sight. With a gesture born of pure instinct, Cade reached out through the Force and grasped the wreckage of a nearby starship hull. The massive piece of metal, weighing several tons, ripped free from the jungle floor and flew toward Talon with devastating speed. She sensed the attack at the last moment, but couldn't fully dodge while maintaining her lightning assault on Sazan. The wreckage slammed into Talon with crushing force, burying her under twisted metal and debris. The impact broke several ribs and left her momentarily stunned, her concentration shattered. By the time she used the Force to throw off the wreckage, her targets were already fleeing. Sazan, barely conscious, was being carried by Vao and the princess toward their ship. What followed was a running battle through the jungle as both sides received reinforcements. Imperial Knights Antares Draco and Ganner Krieg, who had been protecting the princess from the beginning, fought alongside the Jedi. These weren't ordinary warriors, but elite protectors trained from birth to serve the Fel dynasty. Their silver lightsabers and specialized armor made them nearly equal to Sith in combat. Talon regrouped with Darth Nihil and pursued the fleeing enemies to their ship. In the final moments before the Mynock lifted off, she force-jumped toward the closing boarding ramp, intending to continue the fight aboard the vessel. However, Antares Draco was ready, using a massive force push that sent her tumbling back to the ground. The ship escaped into hyperspace, leaving Talon standing in the jungle with her second major failure. Returning to Coruscant after the Vendaxa failure, Talon expected punishment. She had failed to capture the princess twice now, and Krait's rage could be terrible. Other Sith had been executed for lesser failures. Yet, when she delivered her report, the Dark Lord focused on an unexpected detail. Her investigation had identified the smuggler who helped the princess escape, Cade Skywalker, son of the legendary Cole Skywalker, last heir to the bloodline that helped shape galactic history for generations. Krait's obsession with the Skywalker line ran deeper than mere symbolism. From Anakin to Luke to Cole, that bloodline had produced beings of unprecedented force potential who eventually became pivotal figures in galactic events. Therefore, the corruption of a Skywalker to the dark side would shatter remaining hope among those who still resisted Sith rule. More personally, Krait believed that Skywalker power might hold the key to healing his own deteriorating condition, as the Yuzhong Vong implants were slowly killing him despite extending his life. New orders came swiftly. Princess Fel was now a secondary concern compared to the opportunity Cade represented. Thus, Talon was to focus all resources on capturing him alive and undamaged. Krait wanted to turn this lost Jedi into the ultimate Sith weapon, and Talon would be the blade that cut him free from his past. The Trap in the Temple. Intelligence networks across the Sith Empire focused on tracking Cade Skywalker's movements. Every smuggler den was monitored. Every shadow port watched for signs of the Mynock. Yet Cade proved frustratingly elusive, using skills learned during years in the criminal underworld to stay ahead of pursuit. However, what finally provided an opening wasn't his mistake, but his compassion. Reports indicated that the Sith had captured Hosk Twi'leks, an elderly Bothan Jedi known for his healing abilities. The healer had survived the Ossus massacre and spent years secretly tending to refugees from the war. His capture was significant because he had known Cade's father and might possess information about other surviving Jedi. Therefore, he was brought to the Sith Temple on Coruscant for interrogation. Krait correctly predicted that Cade's attachment to fellow Jedi would override his survival instincts. Despite abandoning his training and claiming to care nothing for the Force, Cade had repeatedly risked himself to help others. Thus, the trap was elegant in its simplicity. Hold Hosk in the temple's lower levels with minimal apparent security, then wait for a rescue attempt. Talon positioned herself in the detention complex, using force concealment to remain undetected. She had studied recordings of Cade's fighting style from Vendaxa, noting how he mixed Jedi training with street brawling techniques. This time, she would be ready for his unconventional approach. More importantly, she wouldn't underestimate his raw power again. The infiltration came 3 weeks after Hosk's capture. Cade entered the temple disguised as a bounty hunter, delivering captured Jedi sympathizers. His acting was convincing enough to fool the outer guards, but Talon sensed his Force presence the moment he passed the temple's threshold. Thus, she shadowed him through the corridors, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. When Cade reached Hosk's cell and began slicing the lock, Talon revealed herself. She stepped from the shadows with her lightsaber already ignited, blocking his only exit route. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, predator and prey finally face to face without distractions or allies. The duel that followed was unlike any Talon had experienced. Cade fought with barely controlled fury, his lightsaber work mixing classical sequences with brutal improvisations. He had abandoned the Jedi restraint that made most lightsiders predictable, instead channeling emotions that bordered on the dark side. Talon matched him blow for blow, her single blade creating defensive patterns that turned aside his assault. She tried to maintain distance, using her superior reach and flexibility to strike from unexpected angles. However, Cade pressed forward relentlessly, accepting glancing wounds to land heavier strikes. The turning point came when Cade fully embraced the dark side. His eyes, already bloodshot from death stick withdrawal, flashed with yellow corruption. The force blast he unleashed was powerful enough to shatter every piece of furniture in the corridor and slam Talon against the far wall. Before she could recover, he was on her. One hand locked around her throat, while the other raised his lightsaber for a killing strike. But the moment of triumph became his downfall. Darth Nihil had been monitoring the situation, waiting for the perfect opportunity. As Cade focused entirely on Talon, the Nagai warrior struck from behind. Invisible tentacles of force energy wrapped around Cade's throat, cutting off his air and causing him to drop both Talon and his weapon. Within seconds, the Skywalker heir collapsed into unconsciousness. Talon rose slowly, one hand massaging her bruised throat. She had been defeated again, saved only by Nihil's intervention. Yet instead of shame, she felt anticipation. If Cade could channel such power while fighting against his nature, what might he accomplish if properly trained? Therefore, Krait's vision of converting him suddenly seemed less like ambition and more like necessity. They brought the unconscious Cade before Darth Krait in the throne room. The ancient Sith Lord examined his prize with satisfaction, noting the force potential that radiated from the young man even while suppressed. He commended both hands for their success, though Talon noticed the slight emphasis when he praised Nihil's timely assistance. The breaking of a Skywalker. Krait's campaign to convert Cade Skywalker began immediately. Physical torture proved ineffective. Years of hard living had given him remarkable pain tolerance. Meanwhile, psychological warfare using recordings of his father's death only strengthened his hatred without providing control. Traditional Sith conversion techniques failed because Cade had already touched the dark side through trauma rather than teaching. The breakthrough came when Krait discovered something unprecedented about his prisoner. During a torture session supervised by Darth Maladai, Cade instinctively used the Force to heal his own wounds. However, this wasn't the calm, light side healing that Jedi practiced, but something raw and primal that drew on dark emotions. When Maladai reported this to Krait, the Dark Lord immediately recognized its significance. Krait's most cruel manipulation came when he infected Cade's closest friends, Jariah Sin and Delia Blue, with Yuzhong Vong coral seeds. The Yorick Cool implants caused them excruciating pain and would kill them without intervention. Faced with watching his friends die in agony, Cade's resolve cracked. He was forced to channel his dark side healing ability to save them, each use drawing him deeper into darkness. The healing process revealed why Krait valued this ability so highly. When Cade channeled healing through anger or desperation rather than compassion, the energy took on dark side characteristics. More importantly for Krait, it could potentially repair damage that light side healing couldn't touch, including the Yuzhong Vong implants that were slowly killing him. During this period, Krait assigned Talon to oversee Cade more closely. Sensing an opportunity, Krait ordered Cade to heal the injuries he had inflicted on Talon during their duel. As Cade channeled the Force to mend her wounds, an unexpected side effect occurred. A force bond formed between them, allowing each to sense the other's presence and emotions. Krayt saw this as useful, believing it would help bind Cade to the Sith. For a brief time, Cade feigned submission to learn more about his captor's plans. Krayt assigned him to train under Talon, creating a twisted master-apprentice dynamic. She demonstrated Sith combat techniques while he pretended to embrace the dark side teachings. During this deception, their interactions grew more complex. There was even a moment of dark intimacy between them, though it was manipulation rather than genuine connection. Talon remained absolutely loyal to Krayt throughout, eventually reporting that Cade's conversion was incomplete, that his submission was false. The final test came when Krayt decided to force Cade's conversion publicly. He arranged for Hosk Twi'leks, the Jedi healer Cade had tried to rescue, to be brought before the throne. The test was straightforward. Execute the old Jedi to prove commitment to the Sith path. Refusal would mean watching Hosk die anyway, but slowly and painfully. Death and defiance. The throne room had been specially prepared for Cade's final test. Sith lords lined the walls as witnesses, while Krayt sat on his obsidian throne, Yuzhong Vong armor pulsing with each labored breath. Darth Talon stood at Krayt's right hand, her face an emotionless mask of loyalty. Beside her, Darth Nihil waited with characteristic patience, ready to act if the prisoner attempted escape. Hosk Twi'leks knelt in the center of the room, binders securing his hands behind his back. The elderly Bothan showed no fear despite his situation, meeting Cade's eyes with calm acceptance. They had dragged him from the detention cells specifically for this moment, knowing his connection to Cade's father would make the test more meaningful. Krayt's voice echoed through the chamber as he presented the choice. Cade could take the lightsaber offered to him and execute the Jedi cleanly, proving his commitment to the Sith. Or he could refuse and watch as the old healer died anyway, but much more slowly. There would be no rescue this time, no last-minute escape, only decision and consequence. Cade stood frozen with the weapon in his hand, its weight seeming to increase with each passing second. He struggled with the choice. Part of him wanted to strike down Hosk simply to end his suffering quickly, while another part raged against everything the Sith represented. When Cade continued to hesitate, Krayt grew impatient. The ancient Sith Lord rose from his throne and approached Hosk directly. If his prospective apprentice wouldn't act, he would demonstrate the price of weakness. His lightsaber ignited with a crimson flash as he moved toward the kneeling Jedi. Without warning, Krayt struck. His blade pierced through Hosk's chest in one swift motion, and the old Jedi gasped as the lightsaber burned through his body. Cade watched in horror as Hosk's eyes met his one final time before the life faded from them. Krayt withdrew his blade, letting Hosk's lifeless body fall to the floor. "You see," Krayt said coldly, "your hesitation changed nothing. The Jedi is dead, and his suffering was prolonged by your weakness." What happened next shocked everyone present. As Krayt turned back toward his throne, the air beside Cade shimmered and a translucent figure appeared. Cole Skywalker stood before his son as a Force spirit, visible to all through the sheer power of his manifestation. The deceased Jedi Master looked exactly as he had in life, even bearing the wounds from his death at Ossus. Father and son stared at each other across the gap between life and death. Cole didn't speak, but his presence conveyed everything necessary. He reminded Cade of who he truly was, not through words, but through the Force itself. The sight of his father's spirit, still protecting others even in death, shattered whatever hold the dark side had gained on Cade. With sudden clarity and purpose, Cade reached out through the Force toward Krayt's throne. His father's lightsaber, taken as a trophy 7 years ago, flew from its display mount into his waiting hand. The blue blade ignited with a sound that seemed to fill the throne room, its light pushing back the shadows that had dominated this place for so long. Krayt's rage at this defiance was terrible to behold. He unleashed Force lightning at Cade, intending to kill him for this insult. However, Cade had found his center, and his blade intercepted the attack, absorbing the dark side energy. In that moment of perfect clarity, he knew exactly what he had to do. Spinning away from Krayt's assault, Cade struck at the nearest target, Darth Talon. His blade pierced her abdomen in a precise thrust that would incapacitate but not kill. As she gasped and collapsed, clutching the wound, He was already moving toward his next objective. The strike created the distraction he needed, forcing the other Sith to divide their attention between helping their wounded comrade and stopping his escape. Chaos erupted in the throne room as Sith Lords moved to attack the escaping Jedi. Cade fought his way through the temple corridors, using both his lightsaber and the Force to clear a path. The chaos of his rebellion created confusion throughout the Empire, with alarms blaring and Sith forces scrambling to respond. In the confusion, Cade fought toward the temple's upper levels. Sith Lords tried to stop him, but his fury and determination overwhelmed their defenses. Darth Nihil attempted to recapture him, but Cade used a massive force push to send the Nagai warrior crashing through a wall, buying precious seconds to continue his fight. Eventually, Cade's crew, including his mother Morrigan Cord operating under her Nina Calaxide identity, helped extract him from Coruscant during the chaos. Through all of this, Talon lay on the throne room floor, pressing her hands to the wound in her stomach. The physical pain was manageable. She had endured worse during her training. She felt only cold fury at being used as a distraction, at being defeated yet again by the Skywalker. There was no sympathy, no understanding, only the bitter taste of failure. Krait's voice cut through the chaos, ordering the immediate pursuit of the escapees. Still, the damage was done. Cade Skywalker had escaped, though Hosk Twi'leks had died as Krait intended. As medical droids arrived to tend to Talon's wound, she heard Krait's pronouncement of her fate. She had failed in her most important assignment. Once healed, she would face judgment for that failure. The Shadow War. Talon's recovery in the Bacta tank was swift and efficient. The wound Cade had inflicted healed cleanly, leaving only another scar to add to her collection. When she emerged from the medical bay, she expected immediate execution. Krait's rage over Cade's escape had been terrible, with 3 Sith Lords dead simply for suggesting the failure wasn't entirely Talon's fault. However, the Dark Lord had different plans for his wounded hand. The galaxy had erupted in renewed conflict following Cade's public defiance, and Krait needed every skilled warrior to maintain control. The escape from Coruscant had galvanized resistance movements across the Empire. Footage of Cade Skywalker wielding his father's lightsaber spread through underground networks, proving that heroes still existed who could stand against the Sith. Meanwhile, Roan Fel's forces grew bolder, launching raids on Sith installations. Furthermore, surviving Jedi emerged from hiding to strike at Imperial targets. What had been a subdued galaxy suddenly blazed with rebellion. Krait assigned Talon to hunt down these resistance cells with ruthless efficiency. She threw herself into the mission with cold determination, silencing any who opposed the Sith through systematic elimination. Wherever rebellion surfaced, Talon was there to snuff it out, rooting out conspirators and executing any surviving Jedi before they could rally others to their cause. Each success reinforced her absolute loyalty to Krait and the Sith cause. The bond with Cade that had formed when he healed her remained, stretched thin by distance but not entirely severed. Sometimes she could sense his presence in the Force, a distant echo that she used to track resistance movements. This connection served only as a tool for hunting, nothing more. Everything changed when Darth Weirlock, Krait's most trusted advisor, betrayed his master. During a mission to Had Abaddon where Krait sought ancient Sith artifacts to heal his deteriorating condition, Weirlock struck when the Emperor was weakened. The Chegrian Sith Lord used obscure Force techniques to stop Krait's hearts, then entombed the body in stasis while claiming the Dark Lord had died from his Yuzhong Vong implants. With Krait dead, the one Sith immediately began fracturing. Weirlock claimed the throne, but many Sith Lords refused to acknowledge him. Some declared themselves independent warlords, carving out personal domains. Others simply vanished, using the chaos to disappear with whatever resources they could steal. Thus, the rule of one, dependent on absolute loyalty to a single leader, collapsed without Krait's will binding it together. Talon found herself in a precarious position. Her authority derived entirely from being Krait's hand, a position that meant nothing with Krait dead. Weirlock offered to maintain her rank if she swore loyalty to him, but she sensed the weakness in his rule. Her loyalty had always been to Krait alone. Her decision came when Darth Nihil approached her with shocking news. He had discovered evidence that Krait might not truly be dead, that Weirlock had placed him in stasis rather than destroying the body. Together, they could expose Twi'lek's deception and restore their master. This was exactly what a loyal Sith should want, a chance to regain position and purpose. Talon didn't hesitate. Her loyalty to Krayt was absolute, and she would see him restored to power. When Krayt did return, resurrecting himself through pure dark-side will and reclaiming leadership of the fractured Sith, Talon stood with Nile as they welcomed their master back, helped him purge Twi'lek's supporters, and prepared for the final war Krayt declared against all who opposed him. She performed her duties perfectly, the ideal Sith warrior once more. The Battle of Twi'leks. The war reached a turning point when Krayt discovered the location of the hidden temple on Twi'leks, where Jedi survivors had gathered to preserve their traditions. This represented the largest concentration of Jedi since the Ossus massacre, making it an irresistible target. Therefore, Krayt assembled a massive assault force, determined to finish what he had started 7 years ago. Darth Talon commanded one of the attack wings, leading Sith warriors and Imperial stormtroopers against the temple's defenses. The Jedi had prepared for this day, establishing overlapping fields of fire and force barriers that slowed the initial assault. Still, they were outnumbered 10-1, and many were younglings or elders rather than warriors. As the battle raged, Talon cut through the defenders with cold efficiency. She faced similar opponents from Vendaxa, including Shadow Vao, who had survived their previous encounter. This time, she was prepared for his double-bladed lightsaber trick, having learned from their duel on the Jungle World. Their rematch was fierce, with Vao defending younglings trying to reach evacuation ships. Despite his determination and skill, Talon's experience and dark-side power gave her the advantage. After a brutal exchange, Vao was forced to retreat with the younglings, escaping once again, but leaving many other Jedi to face the Sith onslaught. The battle turned catastrophic when Cade Skywalker arrived, having rushed back from his mission upon sensing the attack through the Force. His presence rallied the defenders momentarily, but the cost was devastating. During the chaos, Cade's uncle Nat Skywalker sacrificed himself to save his nephew from a killing blow. Nat's death hit Cade hard. Another Skywalker fallen to protect him, another reminder of the price others paid for his survival. The Sith's overwhelming numbers and elite forces ultimately proved too much. Despite Cade's efforts and the courage of defenders like Wolf Sazin and Master Kukruk, the hidden temple fell. The surviving Jedi were forced to escape, scattering into hyperspace as their sanctuary burned behind them. For Cade, witnessing the temple's destruction and his uncle's death became the catalyst that would drive him to finally embrace his destiny and lead the assault on Coruscant itself. Their duel was purely physical, each strike carrying lethal intent. Cade fought to stop her advance, while Talon fought to eliminate him as an obstacle to victory. The battle ended when the Sith's overwhelming numbers forced all defenders to retreat. The hidden temple was destroyed, its knowledge lost, but most of the Jedi managed to escape into hyperspace. Krayt claimed victory, yet the surviving Jedi would regroup with Imperial and Alliance forces to plan their counterattack. The final battle. The war's climax came when the Allied forces launched a desperate assault on Coruscant itself. Cade Skywalker had united the Jedi with Roan Fel's Imperial Knights and remnants of the Galactic Alliance fleet. Together, they struck at the heart of Krayt's power, while the Sith Empire was distracted by internal conflicts and stretched thin across the galaxy. Darth Talon stood ready in the Sith Temple alongside Darth Strife and other loyalists. She had prepared for this moment, knowing it would likely mean her death. Her loyalty to Krayt was absolute, and she would fight until the end. When the strike team penetrated the temple's defenses, Talon was among the first to engage them. She faced multiple opponents: Jedi Knights seeking vengeance, Imperial Knights fighting for their true Emperor, and soldiers who had lost everything to Sith rule. Her lightsaber wove patterns of death, each movement perfectly executed despite the chaos around her. Then Cade appeared, and everything else faded to background noise. He had grown tremendously since their last encounter, his power now focused and controlled rather than raw and emotional. The difference was immediately apparent when their blades met. Where once he had fought with desperate fury, he now moved with calm purpose that made him far more dangerous. Their final duel was brief and decisive. Cade's mastery had surpassed hers, his unique blend of light and dark techniques creating combinations she couldn't counter. He struck with overwhelming force, shattering her defenses and sending her crashing to the ground. But before he could deliver a finishing blow, she managed to escape in the chaos, fleeing to warn Crate of Cade's approach. Talon reached the throne room just as Cade arrived to face Crate. She stood witness to the final battle between them, the ancient Sith Lord unleashing powers accumulated over centuries, while Cade fought with the legacy of every Skywalker before him. The duel raged through the throne room and onto the temple's highest spire, where lightning from a force storm illuminated their clash. In the end, Cade proved victorious. He impaled Crate through the heart, then used the Force to hurl the body into Coruscant's sun, ensuring no resurrection would be possible. With their master truly dead, the remaining Sith scattered. Some died fighting, others surrendered, and many simply vanished into the chaos of a collapsing empire. Darth Talon had survived the battle and escaped during the confusion. Her fate, like that of many one Sith survivors, became shrouded in mystery.
Talon disappeared, and the galaxy never learned what became of her. Desire was only ever one way a species could take hold of the galaxy's imagination. Others earned their reputations through fear, through hunger, or through what was done to them long before anyone thought to write it down. And those stories are far harder to sit with. See the species of Star Wars at their most horrifying next.